When I think about the harmonica, I think of a very expressive instrument. Think about it. We have the ability to play single notes and chords. We have all these bends, which add a lot of subtlety and nuance to our playing. And you can control those bends and be very expressive with them in the long run. And you also have techniques that are very similar to what you would expect with the human voice, like vibrato. So there's a lot that we can do on harmonica to be soulful and emotional and expressive. And of course, a lot of the music that most harmonica players play over is like the blues and blues adjacent genres. So that also kind of adds to this feeling. But if you are a beginning harmonica player, you might know that if you go to solo over a blues song, it doesn't really sound or feel that soulful. So what's going on? What do you need to do to get that feeling and emotion in your playing? That's what we're going to be talking about today, coming up. Okay, let's get started with today's 5 tips. Number 1, use your dynamics to create emotional moments. So dynamics are your volume levels, okay? We can play really quietly, we can play really loudly, but I also like viewing them as a measure of intensity. We have a low dynamic level, something like a piano is something that we're really gonna play by holding back quite a lot. And then we have, let's say, mezzo forte, that's right in the middle. Then we have forte. Then we have fortissimo. You can see it got way more intense as I increased in volume. We call that increase in volume a crescendo, okay? And usually it's done more gradually. Okay, so that's a crescendo, and you can use crescendos to make very powerful emotional moments in songs. So that's one way to use them. Another way to use your volume level is to back off. So let's say you're playing something that's really intense. It kind of gives your audience a little bit of a break when you go from something that's intense to something that is significantly less intense. So that's one way of being more soulful with your playing, is to use your volume levels. One extra tip here is that if you are playing with a microphone, you can use your air to change your volume levels like we were just doing, but it's not going to be quite as effective. So in that case, you may have to use the volume knob on your mic, or maybe even a volume expression pedal or something to get that swell in volume if you're after the same effect if you're playing amplified. Tip number 2 is to use the singing method. So here's what I'm talking about. I used to run a podcast called The Climb Up, and when I was on that podcast, I was talking to musicians about their experience learning music. And on one episode, I talked to a guitar player who had a very interesting story. He learned how to play the guitar when he was blind as a child. Eventually he healed, but when he was a child, he couldn't see it all, and he had to just kind of like figure it out and use his ears. And it kind of gave him a different understanding of how to play music. And one thing he shared with me that I thought was really cool was that he found it's very effective to sing underneath his playing. So for a little bit of backstory, this guy was a guitarist and a bassist, but he played a lot of jazz. So he played, like jazz standards and stuff. And if you don't know, jazz standards are usually built off of old show tunes, okay? So these show tunes would have lyrics, and they turned into these jazz standards. Now, what he would do is he would sing the lyrics of the original song as he's playing the guitar, and I just found his playing to be so much more expressive, so I tried it myself. And you could do this too when you're improvising. So I would say, try this with the blues, okay? So the blues is on, and come up with some words in your head. It doesn't need to be anything in particular. You could take words from a song that you already know, which will kind of lead you to play stuff that sounds like that song, or you could just do something different, right? Like, my baby left me, or only got to be in the right key. And you try to figure these things out. My baby left me. She's been gone for so long. And you can use these kind of things to make your playing sound more human. And you can even do this, even if you don't have words. Sometimes you can just kind of like hum or sing a melody and then get yourself to play that melody on your harmonica, and even that will make your playing more expressive. So it's something to try. It's a little less straightforward than the other tips that I have for you today, but I think it could really impact your playing if you give it a shot. The next tip I have for you today is to use your technique. So here's what I'm talking about. We all learn a bunch of skills, right, when we're playing harmonica. We learn bends, we learn vibrato, we learn glissandos. But the problem is, in my experience as a teacher actually watching people play, is that most players do not actually use these things that we spend, months learning and working out, and then it's like, we're just gone, right? So I would suggest use some of the skills, or a lot of the skills, or all of the skills that you've learned to be a more expressive player. So here's a couple of different things that you can do. At the end of a note, let's say you're holding a note. Okay, you can add vibrato or wah to that note. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. Make sure to do your trills. I find that trills can also be very expressive and soulful. Okay, on that point, your bends are also a way to be more expressive. One little trick that I like to do is do a lot of bend scoops. So I start on a bend, like let's say 3 whole step draw bend, and then I release that bend to 3 draw. Okay, so that's another little trick there. But there's a lot of different things that you can learn technique-wise and apply to your playing. So if you are forgetting to actually utilize your techniques while you are soloing, just remember that they're there and try to think about how you can use them in your music. The next tip I got for you today is to play one note and hold it for a really long time. This is something that I see a lot of jazz and blues players doing, and it can be really effective to play something and just do it significantly longer than anyone expects you to. So you could do this with a single note, or you could do this with maybe like some sort of like a triplet pattern or something. So we'll do the single note first. So let's say you're playing a song, and then let's say you end on 2 draw. Now on that 2 draw, instead of just ending it there, what if you just held it as long as you possibly can, like this? Okay, so that has a lot more of, kind of an emotional push than just, playing it simply that short. Okay, so that's another cool trick that you can use while you're soloing. You can use this in other ways. Let's say you have a repeating pattern like this, like a 4 step draw bend, 4 draw, 5 draw. Now do that way longer than anyone expects, and it will sound really cool. A little bit messy there, but you get the idea, okay? So that's another trick that you can use. So hold things out way longer than you would normally expect them. The last tip I have for you today is to use rests while you're playing. So I know this is pretty basic information, but a lot of us don't use it, myself included, okay? So if you're playing over, let's say, a blues track, and you play a little bit, take a break. Take a rest. Let the audience kind of soak it in, and any rest that you're giving yourself or the audience kind of increases the perceived tension of the next thing that you play. Okay, those rests add to the tension and makes your playing more interesting and more expressive. So those are the tips I have for you today. If you want to learn more ways to make your playing sound better, watch this video up here. There's some new tips in there that I think will help you out a lot. I will catch you next time. Peace.